Welcome to the Breath of Fresh Air Dental Podcast. Whether you're a seasoned practice owner, a new dentist, or an office manager looking to enhance your skills, this podcast is for you. Our friendly and knowledgeable hosts are here to answer your burning questions, address common pain points, and provide practical solutions to help you overcome any obstacles you may face. Our hosts, Amanda Demora and Sarah Hamlin, bring to the table lengthy careers in both clinical dentistry and practice administration. They now preside as the CEO and COO of Essential Dental Services.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Breath of Fresh Air podcast. I'm Amanda Demora.
And I'm Sarah Hamlin.
And today's episode, we're going to talk about making the transition from a clinical role in dentistry, be that a dental hygienist, a dental assistant, into the dental billing space. We see this question come up a lot on Facebook groups, specifically how to do it, what to do, and all of that stuff. So we're going to dive into this today. I'm very excited.
Yes, excited to talk about it. Excited to pull more people into our amazing web.
Yes. All right. So first things first, what would be some of the key skills and knowledge required to make a successful transition from a clinical role into remote billing? Go ahead, Sarah. What are your preliminary thoughts?
Well, so I think several things. Like the first kind of disclaimer that I think we have to give with this episode is to let you know that if you're in a clinical role and you're thinking about transitioning into billing, it's not going to be an overnight process, right? You didn't become a hygienist overnight. You didn't become an assistant overnight. There's a lot of things to learn. And even though there's not always certifications or other, licensing requirements for billing, I think that it is still something that takes some time to figure out. There's a lot of pieces and parts. So if you're wanting to start dabbling in dental billing, just know that it's going to take you some time and it's going to take some learning, but that's okay. We're welcoming everybody. We're happy to have more people in the mix. Just know it's not going to be instantaneous and you're probably not going to be able to jump in quite as quickly as you might hope.
That's a really good point. And oftentimes when anyone asks me, how long did it take you to be trained in insurance or fully trained as a practice manager, something to that tune, I always say 10 years. It took me 10 years to really feel comfortable in every single thing that I was doing. And I was always taking CE and making sure I was on top of as much as I could be on top of. So it really isn't an overnight process. And that's a really important thing to understand here.
Well, not only that, but also, continuing education. We're still continuing our education in insurance. I mean, insurance plans change, yearly, if not mid-year, if not monthly. I just was reading some information about the new ADA claim form that's coming out in 2024. These things change all the time. And with all of these updates, we have to be informed, just like things change clinically, just like, new information comes out clinically, new information comes out on the insurance side too. So, same, I would say at least a decade for me to feel like I kind of know things like the back of my hand, but then the back of my hand changes because the insurance has changed or the portal changes, or now we have to access something on Availity instead of however we were accessing it before. So, all of those things it's just like anything else in dentistry or probably anything else in life it's always evolving, and you have to be willing to keep up with the changes if you want to stay in the mix.
Definitely not a one and done type of learning experience. So going back to the question, what skill?
Sorry, I got us off on a tangent.
Yeah, we had to get our little disclaimer in there. What skills and knowledge is required? So, I mean, a solid understanding of the revenue cycle process and what that means in particular to a dental office setting.
So I think maybe we take a moment here to just kind of explain a bird's eye view of the revenue cycle because I'm not sure that if you are in a clinical setting that you even know what a revenue cycle is or how to manage it or why it needs to be managed. So maybe we kind of start there and see if that helps people have a little bit of a foundation here for what all is needed.
Yeah. So to me, the birth of the revenue cycle is the schedule. Patients are on the schedule, and those patients need their insurance verified. Some kind of dental insurance verification, a breakdown. So what we're offering to our clients is usually one of two things. So filling out a complete PDF breakdown form that is specific to that patient's insurance and group and subgroup number. And on that is going to be a variety of things, of course, specific codes that office is looking for, maximums, deductibles, all of that stuff. So to me, that's the birthplace of the revenue cycle. And then from there, it's the treatment. It's what's coded in that chair. It's what's supplied to the front office from the clinical team. You know, you're letting your front office know what you did back there. And the front office is generally wrapping that up. They're sending that claim off to the insurance company with whatever might be appropriate for that code. So that might be intraoral photos, radiographs, narratives or clinical notes, something like that.
The only other thing that I was going to kind of throw in the mix there too is that like part of the verification process is understanding how insurance plans are built. And obviously not every plan is built the same, but there is kind of like a standard-ish understanding for these insurance plans, like that they have a yearly maximum that they pay out, that they pay a percentage of procedures instead of just paying for a full procedure, what it means to be in network versus out of network. All of those kind of nuancy things are kind of involved in the verification process. So yes, to all that Amanda said, but adding that little caveat in there as well, because I think honestly that little caveat is one of the hardest and trickiest parts of revenue cycle management, I think. But so once the claim goes out with all the necessary attachments, then we're talking following up with that claim, whether it is processed by insurance in a timely manner, then it comes back to us in the form of either a payment or a denial on an EOB. So being able to post that payment accurately into the practice management software with all necessary write-offs and also patient portion collected, that's part of it. Also, I wish that every claim just paid outright on the first submission, but that is definitely not the reality of revenue cycle management. So the other big part of it is following up with information requests when they want more or different information, or when they didn't look at your attachments like they were supposed to. Following up on denials.
But then they magically find them when you have to call.
When you provide them with that NEA number. So understanding all of that, and also kind of a part of the claim submission process too that we didn't even touch on, is understanding a clearinghouse, what a clearinghouse does and how to use it. So clearinghouse can also be used to help with denials and rejections of these claims. And then beyond that too, you get claims that aren't processed in a timely manner by the insurance company, or they don't give us an update about those claims. And so that's when we transition into outstanding claims tracking and follow-up. So making sure that your claims are, followed up on in a timely manner so that you don't run into timely filing issues on those claims, and that the office is getting all the money that they're due, and that the patients are getting all the money that they're due from the insurance companies too.
And then from there, if there's a patient balance left over, the patient's getting a statement. So that's sort of the final step of the revenue cycle, is that balance being cleared up by the patient if deemed necessary. So insurance verification, claim submission, claim follow-up, and then if there's a remaining balance, getting the patient to take care of that balance, also in a timely manner.
Yes.
So that is the revenue cycle summarized. For someone who is new to dental billing and transitioning over from clinical dentistry, are there any specific certifications or courses that would enhance the chances of successfully transitioning?
Yes, of course. I think just like we already kind of beat the dead horse at the beginning about how CEs are important and needed. I mean, there's tons of CEs, there's tons of webinars.
Not all are created equally, and not all are that good.
Correct. And also you need to make sure that you are wisely considering your source. So I think that the other thing that happens a lot, and I think this happens in all aspects of probably life, not just work, the Facebook group that you follow that got you interested in remote dental billing is probably not always the best source of accurate information for anything, really, but especially your revenue cycle management processes. So just keep that in mind. And know that there are, what's the phrase? There's 20 ways to skin a cat, or multiple ways to skin a cat, or something. Every office and every person has their ways of doing things for sure. But I think find a reliable source, try to stick with that reliable source on gaining some information for you that's going to give you like a solid foundation of this kind of stuff.
So this morning, I won't mention names, but there is a dental speaker that I love and I've listened to for years and years, and they had a guest on their webinar, an insurance guru, and some of the information on there was downright scary. And, so to Sarah's point, you really need to be getting your training. If you're new to dental billing and that side of things, you probably haven't taken many courses, so you don't know who the big names are or who's trustworthy. I think in our opinion, and many people's opinion, Teresa Duncan is kind of the pinnacle of knowledge and expertise. And she has a wonderful course called Dental Insurance Design and Management. This course is going to walk you through everything A to Z on insurance and plans and exactly the description, design, and management. And I think this is just a really great, not even foundational, because even people who have been in dental for a very long time, and specifically the insurance side of things, can learn from this as well. Both Sarah and I have taken it ourselves within the past year.
Yep. And when I was in office, I was having my front desk staff watch it, using it during trainings for new employees. I was utilizing it, all the time. So I can't recommend it enough.
Yes. And we'll have that link in our show notes with, she was nice enough to give us a little promo code, so you get a little bit off of that plan. But Teresa is just someone I've followed for years and years too. So she's fantastic. A follow-up to that is to really dive into codes, to CDT codes. The ADA has a dental coding certificate, which I have taken as well.
Same.
This is fantastic too. So it comes with, it can come with the CDT code book and the coding companion book. And if you're getting into dental billing, those are two things you really want next to you sitting at your desk. If you want to reference anything, if you want to check anything, and this really dives into a lot of specifics. So I love this course a lot. Definitely if you're getting started, or even if you're not. Once again, I took this a couple years ago when it first launched. So not just for newbies, but oldies alike.
It's not for newbies. Not just for newbies. And I will tell you guys, I took it maybe a year ago, probably sometime for sure within the last 24 months. So I, am 12 or 13 years into dental billing at this point, taking this course. And I had a couple of things that I still was like, what on earth, or struggled with, or trying to find the right claim or the right code number. I'm sorry. So if you take it and if you're a little overwhelmed, or you think like, holy moly, this is a lot of information, you're not alone. It is a lot of information. It's a lot of information and a lot of nuanced details, even for somebody who's been in it for over a decade. So take it slow, take it easy, but it does have a really good overview of the claim form, what all information is needed on there, as well as the codes, how the codes are broken up in like the code book and by category and all of that stuff. So I think it's a great place to start to get you some like foundational knowledge on codes and how they work. The other thing kind of along with the CDT code book, which I think is great to have by your desk because you just never know when you're going to need it. I also personally really love Dr. Charles Blair's Coding with Confidence. It is basically, yep, Amanda's holding up her copy right in the screen. It is basically the code book on steroids. Essentially, every single code has a breakdown of like when to use it, when not to use it, how it specifically can be used, how it specifically cannot be used, what it does not apply to, what it does apply to. It's a big book. You're going to get your weightlifting in with it, but I can't even tell you how many times I've used it, how much I've accessed it. Is something that is worth having also on your desk right next to the code book.
Yes. Teresa's course has some great information about attachments and things like that too. So definitely some support documents there and reference guides for you to have, forever, essentially. What are some potential challenges or obstacles one might face when transitioning from clinical dentistry to remote billing, and how can they overcome those?
Amanda and I were kind of talking about this before we were recording or when we were discussing this episode. I think the biggest challenge is going to be the most obvious one to you guys if you're in this position. It's that there's not a lot of on the job or training that happens when you come into these positions. We can speak as a remote billing company that is doing hiring for these positions. We're not doing any training of our independent contractors when they come on. We're expecting and hoping and going through the interview process to figure out if these billers know what they're doing beforehand, because we don't have the resources or the capacity to be able to train people from the start. So I think that's probably the biggest obstacle, is that you're going in and you need to know all the information before you start.
Right. And there's not a whole lot of, it's not like assisting or hygiene. There's no formal training. There might be a couple things out there, but none that I've taken and could recommend as like a end all be all to billing. So I would say that, and also I think a challenge perhaps, or something that people are concerned about is specifically with hygiene, is the salary comparison. And how that might come into play. So I want to try to be realistic about that. I think starting out, for sure, you are probably not going to duplicate your hygiene salary with remote billing. That being said, someday when you are a rock star dental biller, you certainly can. But a lot of salary with these positions depends on how much you're doing, how fast you are, how accurate you are, and your personal workflow. So I don't want to say salary is limitless, but it's highly dependent on yourself and your speed and your availability.
Well, yes, and your availability, but also like your commitment too, right? Because like most of our remote dental billers aren't, hourly. And it is kind of your willpower to when you're going to sit down and post and get things done. And if you're wanting to be on top of it and you're motivated to be on top of it and doing it daily, great. But if you're somebody who needs somebody kind of breathing down your neck or pushing you to get stuff done, that might not be the position for you then. Or if you're somebody who needs the schedule in front of you and another patient coming in an hour to motivate you to get your job done, which, let's face it, probably is you if you're in clinical.
Yes. Yep.
This is a very different work at your own pace, kind of situation. So knowing your limitations in that regard, I think, is really important as well.
And really not for everybody. I would say we've had some people who were revenue cycle managers in an office thinking they wanted to make the switch to a remote position, and it really just wasn't for them for some of the reasons that Sarah mentioned, and just in general. I have said myself, like, I don't particularly love working from home either. I'm not sure I see what it's all cracked up to be, but some of the pros are we have a pretty sizable team at this moment in time. And one thing that I really love is that we have a very high number of moms with young kids, and it provides them a lot of flexibility to be with their family. And that's just great for me to see. We have a team member chat, and we always are sharing pictures of kids in there, and it's a lot of fun. So for things like that, it can definitely give you the flexibility you're probably looking for if you're wanting to transition out of clinical, or you just grossed out.
You've debrided your last mouth and you can't take it anymore.
Yes. You've seen one too many patients that didn't brush their teeth before they came in. That's what scared me right out of clinical. Like, too many raisins stuck in people's mouths that I just couldn't deal with.
You know what I
couldn't deal with anymore.
I mean, I guess raisins. I don't know that I saw any raisins when I was helping out with assisting, but anything with an all-on-4, like hybrid denture kind of situation, the stuff that can sneak under those and then live under there for a while, that was enough to, nope, I'm going right back up to the front.
I started to become a bit more queasy, like, as I got older. Mm-hmm. And yes, there was one particular patient who had mandibular tori and kept getting raisins stuck under there. And I don't. And the site after like the third time he came in, I was chairside and just starting to get a little queasy, and I was like, I don't think this is for me anymore.
You know what's funny too is like, this is obviously way off on a tangent, but I can still remember that patient's name, first and last name. I could probably tell you what insurance company he had. Like those kinds of things just stick with you.
Oh, me too.
Once you've seen it from all sides of that, it's just burned in your brain.
I was getting very scarred with, I knew as soon as my dentist would put the patient back, take a look in their mouth, and then he would say to me, can you just do a little rinse? It would mean that there was food in there, and like that just started to make me sick. So dental billing started to look really good after.
Can you just do a little rinse?
Oh, horrible. All right. We're done with our tangent there. So moving on to our next question, which was, what specific softwares or tools should someone be proficient in and well-versed that would give them a leg up here?
So I think I was thinking of this when we were talking about the challenges, because this is for sure one of the challenges is that there's a gajillion insurance companies, and then there's third-party administrators who aren't really insurance companies but are administering the insurance. And then there's, self-funded plans and not self-funded plans and all of these other like nuances. And because of that, there are websites and portals for each of those. And some of them use the same portal that's a kind of universal but not really universal. And the universal one isn't always very handy. Availability. And some of them are super handy, and you wish they could all be like the super handy ones. Like there are so many things to like know about when it comes to insurances it's a huge challenge until you're kind of touching those daily and like, getting into those. You don't know what you don't know until you get in there. So that is for sure part of the problem. The other part in same vein is that there's quite a few different practice management softwares. There's quite a few different clearinghouses. So having a basic knowledge of any or all of those is really important. But if you've only ever worked in one clinical office or two clinical offices that have had the same practice management software, and you've mostly only been working with the clinical side of that software, that right there is going to be a big hurdle for you to get over, which is figuring out the insurance front desk side of that. And then knowing when you go into a remote billing position that not every office uses that practice management software. So it opens up a whole new world of things that you have to learn, and you have to be willing to, tying back to the beginning, willing to learn, willing to investigate, willing to try to do some training, and always trying to keep up on how to use all these different kinds of softwares that are in the mix.
I would say maybe we'll touch on this in a minute, but to try to not to get too crazy with trying to learn practice management softwares, use the one or two, try to get familiar with the one or two that maybe you're most familiar with, even if it's just one. I would say when we're hiring, we only assign people to offices that they're very familiar with that particular software. So if you only know one, that's really not a make or break thing. There'll be plenty of offices out, unless it's Easy Dental, which is going bye-bye at the end of the year. There'll be plenty of offices that have that software for you to work for. In addition to practice management softwares, I think some common platforms and other softwares that dental billing companies use is Google Workspace. Please familiarize yourself with that. Google Sheets, Google Docs, Google Forms. Know how to move around there. It's a big leg up. Adobe. Know how to edit a PDF. Know how to...
Don't get me started on Adobe.
Yeah, they're not high on our list right now, but but we do use them, and they're sort of the universal standard for PDFs out there. At least right now.
Begrudgingly. I use it begrudgingly, and I've figured it out, but it took me some time.
Oh gosh, a whole new Adobe popped up on me the other day, and that just kind of threw me a little bit. But and then
see, why do they do this to us? That's what I'm saying. This happens in insurance portals, Adobe. They just can't leave well enough alone. And you know what?
They just can't help themselves.
Well, and I think, is this showing our age? I feel like when I was younger too, sorry to get off on another tangent. That's what our whole, just so you guys know, the whole podcast is just tangents, but we'll get there eventually. I used to be like on Facebook and stuff when I was younger, which is already probably dating myself. And all of the older people on Facebook, I think, would be like, why is there another update? I hate this update. I didn't want a button here. I didn't want reactions to posts. I just like the like button. And I was always just like, oh, come on, this stuff is fun and exciting. And yet here I am complaining about the latest update to Adobe because it was fine before. Why do we need to change it?
Well, that's kind of like the iPhone. I just said to my husband, like, why do I have 35 app updates a day? I don't even have that many apps. Why do they all need to be updated every single day? But in addition to those, you know, you guys have to be savvy on a computer. That is like my biggest tangent ever. I already went off on that on our last episode, but if you need to take some kind of refresher or like, hey, how do you use a computer in this day and age? Do that because it's very important. Mm-hmm. So a couple other just general tips and tricks. If you're still in office, if you're still working in an office, which you probably are, see if you can shadow someone up at the front desk, someone who is doing all of these things daily for the office if they're not outsourcing. I think for hygienists, an easy place to start, and I realize that, you know, you're seeing patients all day long. There might not be a ton of time to do this, but maybe on your off day or something like that. I've had hygienists do this before. For hygienists, starting with verifications and starting with hygiene codes, learning the ins and outs of those can be kind of the easiest little dipping your toe into the water of dental billing and verifications, and then kind of going from there. Because you know what all those codes are. You know, multi-debridement and SRP and all that stuff and what that means to you. And then now you're going to learn how it correlates to insurance and billing. So
I think that along those lines, I think starting with the verifications is a really great way. If I were going to give someone a roadmap for kind of where to start, I would say first step would be take Teresa's course so that you get a general understanding of insurance, because I think that she does a really good, like, starting with all of the nuts and bolts of the plan. So take the course first, get that general understanding, get your hands on a good breakdown form, whether that's from Teresa, whether that's from the one that your office is using, and literally pick up the phone. I want to say go to a portal, but honestly, I think sometimes picking up the phone is easier because you can go through the form with somebody on the phone, asking all of those questions and knowing all of the details that you need to get for a verification. And I think just the more you kind of start going through it and asking those questions and realizing what the limitations might be, that is a really great place to start.
I agree. So Teresa's course is going to give you all of, like you said, the nuts and bolts, and then you're going to put those into action when you're filling out a breakdown form on your own. So if you can get up to your front office and shadow and help there, that's a really great place to start if your office has that kind of availability.
The only other thing I would say, from using your office kind of to your advantage too, is try to look into some patient like ledgers or accounts too when you have a minute, even if it's maybe like a patient that's coming into your schedule later in the day. You know, you're already in there looking through their clinical notes and their previous visits and all that stuff. So just take a second to open up their account and look at it and see if you can decipher a little bit about what's going on. Like, oh, they were last in on this day. Here's the services that we posted. I see the claim was submitted. I see that it paid. I see that there was a patient portion left. Like, just kind of understanding that flow and exactly what's going on in the ledger or the account is a really important part of it too, because learning how to read a ledger, understanding where payments are going and coming from and what they're attached to and what that leaves left over for the patient, like, that's a big part of revenue cycle management. So just exposing yourself to that more is a good place to start as well.
All right, to wrap up this episode, I just wanted to say that some of our team members who do come from a little bit of a mixed clinical background and front office background, I think having a clinical background is invaluable. The flip side of the information that you guys already know and how it actually applies to clinical dentistry, that's pretty just invaluable. And it really, I think, will help you for sure understand codes and understand billing in a sense that maybe someone who doesn't have that background could do it. So
yeah, I mean, I say go for it, jump on in, start. Yeah. And also I would say, for as much as we have said, you know, that it is going to take you some time and some work, I also want you to know that you got to start somewhere. So get on those courses, get on the learning, and see if it's going to be for you.
Yes. All right, guys, thank you very much for listening, and we'll see you on the next episode.
Bye.